Great. I do hope you're feeling refreshed and ready for the next part of our event, where we'll really focus on some examples of putting sustainability into practice and how businesses have fared on that journey to net zero. So first off, I'd like to invite Giovanna Eusebi from Eusebi Deli and Restaurant to the stage. Right here in Glasgow, this wonderful restaurant, and Giovanna has been an amazing champion and driver for the hospitality businesses in the city to look at their food waste. So looking forward to finding out more from Giovanna. Please welcome her to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. It's really nice to be here. As you know, my name is Giovanna Eusebi. I am the owner of Eusebi Deli and Restaurant in Glasgow's West End. And we've also got a small artisan production bakery in the original shop in the East End of Glasgow. So I want to talk to you a bit about our sustainability journey, be really honest about it. It's a really small business. We've got 50 employees, and tell you where we are, where we're going, and how we got here. To start off, our story was born in Italy, but made in Glasgow over the last 3 generations. It's a story that's inspired to this day by the cucina povera values of my Italian grandparents in southern Italy. They had a really simple life. They grew all their own food using what we now call biodynamic farming. The food was pure, with no chemicals or pesticides. Biodiversity and nature were very much the heart of their world. There was absolutely no waste in their world. In nature, everything was turned into something else. When we started our original business in the East End of Glasgow and in the West End some 6 years ago, the constant at the top of the page for me was about slowing things down and making from scratch. At Eusebi's, to this day, we have adapted all of their very simple ways of fresh, seasonal cooking, fighting against a climate of fake fast food, and trying to share some of that old love with a whole new generation. Our menu to this day celebrates seasonality and champions niche local suppliers who share our values of clean food. When lockdown hit this year, our restaurant and everyone in the hospitality industry were thrown into complete freefall. Our food safety nets were taken away, and the fragility of our food systems and supply chains really hit home to me. Compounded by Brexit, it's kind of been a real double whammy for us. So it really was time for us to kind of reevaluate as a small business. And as a small business, as a team, in lockdown, we did 2 things. The first thing we did was we put our sustainable policy onto paper for the first time. And secondly, we shared it with our team, getting them involved. We started with putting down all the kind of good things that we were doing and the kind of things that we just took for granted. Things like that 60% of our menu was sourced within a 150-mile radius, that we supported small family businesses like ours, sustainable farmers, fishermen and growers. We always make before buying, including our own fresh pasta and ricotta cheese. Our wine list focuses on small growers making great biodynamic, sustainable wines. Trust me, when I started selling these wines in Shettleston in the East End of Glasgow 20 years ago, selling organic wine took little persuasion and a lot of sampling. We also looked at a really big thing I want to talk to you about now was our food waste. As a result of the pandemic, we also got involved with a local homeless charity called Kindness. And a good thing that came out of the pandemic for us was that we now turn some of our surplus food into continuing to make meals for that charity once a week. COVID also forced us as a business to flip 100% to a takeaway model for a significant period of time. And it really made us look at our plastic usage. Our takeaway containers, 70% of them now are compostable. And you know what? That all sounds great, but it's not enough. As a small business, I really want to level up with you and say that the journey to be more sustainable as a small operator can seem really overwhelming. A few months ago, through lockdown, we started talking with Circular Glasgow, the Chambers, Zero Waste Scotland and Experience Glasgow. And this is a campaign that came about called Plate Up for Glasgow. It's an initiative to address food waste by challenging the hospitality venues in our city to come up with one dish or one drink that otherwise would have gone to landfill. The figures given to us by Zero Waste Scotland were nothing short of alarming. Did you know that a third of all our food is wasted before it even reaches our plates? Food waste costs the Scottish hospitality industry approximately £212 million annually. And the biggest thing that hit me was that food waste is a bigger cause of climate change than plastics. It became apparent that what we throw away is the biggest economic moneymaker for our businesses. Plate Up for Glasgow is not just about making everyone rethink how they can give another life to food they would normally discard, like pickling, preserving, using unsexy, unfashionable cuts of meat and fish. It's about making everyone better through sharing tips, hacks, chefs, inspiring chefs, as well as the diners who also come to our table to try the dishes. As I said, as a small business, the journey to be more sustainable and circular is an ongoing one, and it's not without its challenges. If there's anything I can pass on or inspire to anyone else in the room, what I've learned is that we really need to be the change. We need to not be afraid to disrupt current business models and thinking in our respective industries. I, for one, and now my mind is racing. I'm thinking about, and I'm looking at VisitScotland, so I'm thinking about having a street compostable bin where other restaurants can use it. And I'm thinking about our parks and the green space that we have and how we can grow our own food and how we could have an eco trail through Glasgow, through our city, and do something cool in a tourist industry, but also that helps us be more sustainable as businesses and work together as cooperatives, the public and private sectors together. Small things are the big things. We've heard that this morning already. Plate Up for Glasgow is about making a difference, just one dish at a time. Asking business to make one dish, one change. It was an attainable challenge. But it's more than one dish. The flip side is that it's driving and changing culture at grassroots. It's enough just to plant the seed and change the mindset. I would say to you, don't be afraid to put your own sustainability goals on paper, even if it's just one line or two lines. Involve your teams, start the conversations today with them, and how you can be more circular. You really need them behind you to drive that change. Share ideas with each other, funding opportunities. Circular also applies to our mindset and our hearts. It's not about keeping it to yourself. Engage with Zero Waste Scotland. I've approached them now as a business to find out how we can actually do much more to close the loop in our food waste. On a global scale, it really is quite apparent that our Earth really has nothing more to give us. But hope is there and help is there. This is all our stories, and it's really up to all of us to drive the change in this narrative. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanna, so much for sharing your story, and thank you for all your drive and leadership. Let's now hear from Gordon Drummond of the Cairngorm Bothies, an off-grid and regenerative accommodation powered by solar farms and natural resources. Please welcome Gordon to the stage to hear more about it.
Good morning. My name is Gordon Drummond, and over the next few minutes, I should like to tell you about what I believe is the first ever completely off-grid holiday development in the north of Scotland. I believe it to be unique because when I was researching how to do it, that is off-grid, I was looking for somebody to copy. I couldn't find anyone. So I had to reinvent the damn thing myself. So let me tell you a bit about that story. Let me chronologically take you through my journey towards net zero. I'll tell you where we came from with Cairngorm Lodges. I'll talk a wee bit, show you a couple of videos about what that's all about, and ultimately describe where we're off to. So where are we? We're located in Royal Deeside at the very edge of the Cairngorm National Park. We are located deep within a 100-year-old Scots pine forest, in fact about a mile off-road. And that is one of the motivations of why we had to go completely off-grid. So, let me introduce you to this guy. This guy and his many friends bring our customers back time and time and time again. Our customers seek to engage with the flora and fauna of the forest, and these guys just keep giving. And that, I think, is in part my message, is that if we prioritize the welfare of our environment, it will return to us a sustainable and profitable business. And first and foremost, we're a business. So for us to be sustainable, we must firstly be profitable to continue to exist. But our priority, our focus is absolutely on the environment, because that is our customer experience. So who are we? We opened Cairngorm Lodges 10 years ago. This is my firstborn. It enjoys an annual occupancy of something like 75% per annum. We have a very high degree of repeat customers. We opened Cairngorm Bothies in April 2020. £750,000 in the hole. We opened on the 5th of April 2020. Feel my pain, huh? So, let me show you a bit about what's involved with Cairngorm Bothies. Okay, so let me break down life's essential ingredients into a few component parts, because this is how we had to go off-grid. So we had to take all of life's essential ingredients and break them down. So let me describe how we fulfilled this. So first and foremost, we all need energy. And energy we need for powering low-powered LED lights, a low-energy fridge, and for all of your mobile phones and tablets, right? So that's how we did this. We did this with a solar farm, okay? Now, this is capitally intensive. So what you want to do is try and, where you possibly can, is minimize the utilization of that as your total energy source. So because we're a forestry estate, we were able to use these wood-burning Argas, which you see in the bottom left-hand corner. And we're using those wood-burning Argas to burn waste wood, which is the byproduct of our forestry operations, that our timber is not going for construction purposes. So that waste wood we're burning, the left-hand side of it, and the left-hand side of that is a wood-burning stove, the right-hand side is an oven, and the top is a hot plate. Behind that, there is a back boiler that is heating the hot water system, and moreover, the heating system. So that's doing your heating, your cooking, your hot water, and your shower and taps. We're pumping water out of a subsurface aquifer and delivering that to a consumable specification. We're doing that by using the solar farm during the day, its available power, and bringing that water up to the surface and purifying it to those levels of specification. I don't know whether coffee is one of life's essential ingredients, but there are many that argue that it is. And so that is delivered by a old-fashioned whistling kettle. So that works all day and every day, and people are quite taken with that. So that's how we've stripped back and delivered all of life's functions in that regard. If you come and stay with us, our offer is really about giving you a taste of sustainability. So through our Responsible Visitor Charter, we're encouraging you to stay with us and leave the car at home, and we're encouraging you to abide by our Responsible Visitor Charter and our social responsibility. We absolutely wear with pride, Angela, our Gold Award, which we've been holding for 10 years in green tourism. wear that with pride, and I think we've had that accreditation for something like 7 to 10 years, and I use that absolutely in our marketing. Let me show you the inside of these Bothies. I should probably have said, if you're not Scottish, a bothy is a refuge or a shelter that you use to hide from the Scottish weather, okay? So these things our bothies are a wee bit more luxurious, but that by and large is what they do, okay? Okay, so where are we off to? So I'm looking to complete the accommodation product. So we've got 6 of these bothies at the moment. The 6 going in this winter because of the exceptional market uptake that we've enjoyed over the past year and a bit when we've been allowed to be open. So we're completing the accommodation offering. Six we've got, 6 going in this winter and 12 the following winter. That takes us to a total offering of 24 bothies. Beyond that, I'm looking to develop the picture that you see behind us into some sort of centralized hub. A versatile building whereby we can deliver weddings, we can deliver corporate events, and what we're calling the feel-good factory, which essentially is a wellness center. I think beyond that, I'm looking to try and export my knowledge and skills that I've acquired as the engineer during this process in how to go and do net zero and how to go off-grid. So that's something that I think I've got a lot of learning to take with us, to take and export to other country estates. Let me return back to my key message. Who is really our customer? Our customer is the environment. And by aligning with that, we are delivering this profitable business. So I think our USP in Scotland is absolutely the fantastic environment that we have. And if we can all preserve and protect that, I think that is exportable as Scotland, the brand, more widely than what we are presenting here today. Let's lead on that philosophy, and let's put the environment first. That's my message to this conference. And I think I'm not talking about be a leader, I'm talking about lead. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Gordon. What a wonderful example of sustainable off-grid tourism in action, and clearly exactly what the customers are looking for at the moment. So thanks for sharing your story. And our final case study comes from Paul Easto of Wilderness Scotland, who will tell us a bit more about their journey to net zero and about an exciting new project that they have been working on and sharing here for the first time. I think the ink isn't quite dry on it yet. But Paul, if I could welcome you to the stage, please.
Thank you. So good to be here after an utterly wretched 2 years. This feels like a kind of another milestone on the way back. So great to see some new faces as well as some familiar ones. When I was trying to explain to my children what I was doing, they're still convinced I'm wedged between Joe Biden and Greta Thunberg on the main stage. And I'm just going to kind of roll with it because it's good for kind of dad credibility. Anyway, I've got 8 minutes, so I'm going to have to rattle through this. But you are the first to hear about a new project that we're launching today regarding carbon labelling. But in order to get there, I just need to kind of share a little bit of the story. It's something we've been working on for many years, and there's been a real focus over the last 6 months. For those of you who are not familiar with the business, we're a tour operator. We're based in Aviemore in the Cairngorms. We operate throughout Scotland, but also in the rest of the UK and in Ireland as well. Okay. This was taken, I think it's a few years ago, so that's about half the team. We've got about 100 full-time equivalent staff. This is predominantly our guiding team, our November team retreat that we have. And I wanted to use this to illustrate, because I'm sure there are some people here, activists and critics, who are saying this is the end of flying. We can no longer fly because of the impact of aviation on climate change. The figures suggest that around about 2.5% of total emissions come from aviation. Quite what that relates to in terms of tourism, actually for leisure purposes, isn't quite clear. I've been trying to find that answer out. But the key point is this, and I think Lord Thurso touched on this neatly this morning, is that tourism can be a force for good, and done well, it makes a true difference. And for this, this image to me just demonstrates really we're a rural business, and issues of economic equality, rural depopulation, community resilience, those are real issues that are tackled by the delivery of sustainable tourism. And we take our role as a rural business very seriously, and we know that without international tourism, 70% of our customers come from outside of the UK, these jobs wouldn't be possible. They wouldn't, those people would not be standing there. Our business would be a tiny fraction of the size that we are. So, around the world, many of us have been lucky to travel and see the impact of benefits of good tourism done well. And, in my mind, yes, we have to change our habits, and I wanted to come on to that, but tourism can be a force for good, and it's just critical that we don't lose sight of that. So get on your phones now, start tweeting this, get it on LinkedIn. The Glasgow Principles launched here today. A little bit on the back of the Glasgow Declaration. If enough of you do it, it might take some momentum. But yeah, we've already talked about this, actually. Flying less. We absolutely have got used to those cheap flights to those European destinations, and we're all guilty. I'm sure there's not one of us in the room that hasn't done it. We need to change our behavior. We need to stay longer. That is a kind of key message. Of course, if we're staying longer, then we're probably taking less flights overall throughout the course of the year. And the third part of this is making it count. Choose to stay at hotels that are doing their bit. Choose to travel with transport companies that are taking their commitment to climate change seriously. Choose tour operators that have quantified their impact on the environment and what they're doing to change that. So, again, trying to maximize, I think Lord Thurso brought a phrase, was maximizing the positive benefits of tourism whilst minimizing those environmental impacts. So, a time for action. We approach sustainability really in sort of three strands: climate, conservation, and community. And I just really want to home in on the climate side of what we've been doing. This is a project that we have been working on pretty much full-time for the last 3 months, and I want to share, but it's been several years in the making, because it is quite challenging to get to that point where you feel confident enough to be able to make the kind of commitments and declarations that we are today. So, this is what we're announcing today. We put out a press release this morning, and some social activity later on. We've signed up to the Glasgow Declaration. It's just fantastic to see Visit Scotland taking a lead role on that. I'd encourage all of you to commit to that as well. That declaration, many of you will know, commits to a 50% reduction in emissions by 2030. We're targeting 90%, which is highly aggressive, but we believe we can do it based on the actions and areas of improvement we've identified. That's a reduction of 9% per annum from our base year of 2020. And that hopefully will allow us to achieve what we're deeming as sort of true net zero. So this isn't a case of just writing, a big check to an offsets company and suddenly everything's going to be okay. We're completely changing our language around that, and we're talking much more in the terms of net zero and true net zero. So those emissions that we cannot, after 90% reductions, eliminate will be invested in permanently removing carbon from the atmosphere. And what we're doing on a basis that is totally transparent. So if you want to understand how we've done this, drop me a line, get in touch. It's kind of open source. We're just throwing it out there because I think if we can help other businesses to go through the same process a lot quicker, then ultimately we'll all benefit. So you don't know how much of this can see. I'm not going to go into the very boring detail, some might say, of scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, but the big part of this pie chart here that you can see, those are what scope 3 are, indirect emissions. So those are the emissions arising from the trips that we operate. So this is hotels, restaurants, food, activities, transportation. Those aren't things that we directly control. The much smaller wedge are things that we do control. So those are our office emissions and our transportation. The large part of that smaller percentage there, 14%, is our vehicle fleet, which I'll talk about in a minute. total footprint for the business, and I put this in kilograms rather than tons because I think it's quite important. It sounds worse than it perhaps is in tons, and I think actually trying to quantify what this means, but probably most of you are asking, is that good? Is that bad? How much is that? And to be honest, that's something that we've tried to get our heads around because the next part of this is taking it to the customer. So I want to just flag up something because we talked about some of the resources that are available to business. We moved premises from a very old rented office to this building here in Aviemore. It's a brownfield site. We took it back to the frame and effectively constructed what is now a net zero premises. We've reduced our carbon emissions by 15,000 kilograms per annum as a result of making those changes. We tapped into Energy Saving Trust, just to back up what we've heard this morning. I think we got 100K interest-free loan to put in air source heat pumps that now power the entire building. So everything runs from renewable. There's EV charging points, it's ultra energy efficient. We're kind of really proud, and it's a great place for the local community to gather, as we call them, Team Wilderness, to work, and it's good to see people now back in the office there. So that's already made a significant change to our overall footprint, but as you can see, 15,000 out of 468,000 is actually a really small part. So our focus has to be on the trips that we're operating. So what we're launching today is a carbon labeling scheme for all of our products. So we've got 156 products or itineraries that we sell. These average 7 days, 6 nights in length. And here you can see how that breaks down. Transport is nearly half of that. We offer active and nature-based travel experiences, and they are low carbon by their very nature, but we still need to get to places. We need to get to the hills to go walking. We need to transfer people's bags around if we're going cycling, going sea kayaking, whatever it might be. But what this has allowed us to do is to measure effectively, I think I've worked this out, about 4,600 individual elements that we are delivering each year. Each of those have a carbon footprint, and we've calculated those to come up with this figure of 142 kilograms of CO2 per traveller per trip. Okay, and again, you're probably thinking, what does that mean? Is that good? I mean, just a little bit of context here. I got the idea for this some years ago from a cafe in the Lake District, actually, that was run by the National Trust, and it listed, I'm sure some of you have seen this in certain places, the carbon emissions associated with every single dish. And naturally, you would expect that, vegan dishes, vegetarian, are much lower than meat. Sausage rolls, I like a good sausage roll, and it kind of drew my attention. So I think that at one of our trips is equivalent to about 26 sausage rolls, just as a bit of context. But anyway, we need to kind of make a bit more sense of that for customers. So here you can just see, just at the bottom, we've kind of wrestled with this, and it's not finalized, it's not finessed, but it's just going to be a number, and people need to understand what that number means. So this is what we've now got. We just launched these web pages this morning. These are the figures. So that's a per day figure, but if we use the figure of 142 per trip, you can see how that compares. A flight from London to Paris, 102 kilograms. Caribbean cruise, this is scary. If you've got a Caribbean cruise at this point, you should be worried if you've got one booked. 445 kilograms of carbon per traveller per day. Now, I've worked that out. It means that you can take a wilderness trip for the next 20 years and still have some carbon left over for one Caribbean cruise. And I think that's what we're talking about when we're talking about changing travel. There are changes that need to be made. There will be some beneficiaries of the changes, and there'll be some that obviously don't do so well. We need to make sure that Scotland's positioned on the right side of that. So what we've done, particularly because the transportation element, when we did this analysis, is key, is that for most tour operators, it's about 80% of the overall carbon emissions is the getting there part, and that will often be air travel for many people. So here you can see the differences. I mean, if you fly instead of taking the train, 20 years ago when we started, all of our trips started at train stations, which we still do. People thought we were crazy at the time because everyone was flying budget airlines. But you can see there the differences that makes. So this is a process, I think, of education and inspiration for the customer. Like we've heard, it's about making it easy, giving them the information, hopefully make a better travel choice. So, we've got to think about how we're going to communicate this to the customer over the coming months and years. I hope that this information, this inspiration will lead to people making more kind of responsible travel choices. I think the key thing I want to emphasize is this can be applied to any sector of the tourism industry. You know, whether you're a hotel, a visitor attraction, you know, an event. I think it would be fantastic in the event space to be able to, and to hear what Andrew was talking about, you know, to be able to show to potential delegates, for example, the impact of choosing Scotland as a destination. And again, you know, we accept that some people may have to fly to get here, but once they're here, they're making a very responsible choice as to where they're placing their conference meeting, whatever it might be. So very quickly to wrap up, what things are we going to be focusing on? EVs are within reach. I got one 12 months ago. It's been an experience, I think it's fair to say. It's not been good for the marriage, I can assure you that. There's been some tense moments as the battery's gone down to 3, 2, 1%. Oh my God, we're going to be stuck on the M90. But it's coming, you know, it does work. And are we going to be, I think we're going to actually probably next year, we're going to trial a couple of vehicles. I think Dan was talking about, you know, doing a pilot, you know, giving it a go. And I think we can do that on certain itineraries. It will work because we're not driving very much. But if we can decarbonize the whole fleet, 22 vehicles at the moment that we've got, you know, that's 70,000 kilograms of carbon gone, reduced to zero. Yeah, so that 9% reduction suddenly starts to feel like it's very, very achievable. We've got to think carefully about product design, how we do that. There's changes that we can make without impacting on the customer experience. But again, you saw from that the supply chain is key, and I think this is a call to action for everyone, is to say how can we as an industry come together to improve our performance across the piece, whether it's food waste, more efficient energy systems in hotels, whatever it might be. Those are things that are all going to help us get to this net zero goal. As I say, we've got this sort of phase transition from kind of mitigation to removal. I'd recommend looking that up. It's quite a nuanced subject, but again, we're talking about removing carbon from the atmosphere rather than paying someone actually not to produce it. I learned a lot on this over the last few months. And, you know, ultimately, just I think for Scotland as a destination to just push out this purpose-driven travel message is absolutely key for me. You know, I love this country. I love the fact that we've got so many great businesses here. I admire the leadership that Visit Scotland are taking on this. I think it positions us really well for success and prosperity as we cover out of COVID. So, you know, that's a call to action for all of us. Don't forget the Glasgow Declaration. Don't forget the Glasgow Principles. And if you need to get in touch, those are my details there. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. What an amazing example, and thanks for sharing that and launching your carbon calculator. I appreciate from speaking to you before, a lot of work has gone into that, and also working with your suppliers to get their carbon footprint. So it's a great example of better understanding that size and scope of your emissions and crunching those numbers. And that may not always be the sexy thing to do, but it's the really important starting point to do. Again, going back to where are we now, to understand what the missions are, and then to allow us to see what progress we're making and where we can really prioritize action. So thank you, Paul, and for the project, to you and the team, and for the leadership. So we've had the business perspective now, so let's take a look at sustainable tourism from a destination perspective. So I will now hand over to my colleague, Paula Ward, one of our regional leadership directors. Thank you.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I was laughing at Paul and his going down the percentile on electric vehicles. I quite like that jeopardy. I play petrol roulette on quite a regular occasion at the moment. So the next section is split over the next 40 minutes. We do have a stream and a pre-record that's been submitted to us from our partner in this session, Peter De Bruyne, who is a destination advisor and a sustainable tourism expert for UNESCO. So for the past 10 years, he's coordinated the UNESCO World Heritage and Sustainable Tourism Programme. That's really looking at providing a global framework for finding coordinated and sustainable tourism solutions. So we talked at length as to whether or not it would be appropriate for Peter to come to Glasgow for this session, and we really felt quite strongly that because of the sustainability element, because we're taking place in COP26, that it wouldn't be the appropriate thing for him to do. So he has done this as a pre-record, and I'll just let you have a watch just now.
Hello everyone, warm greetings to all, and thank you, Paula, for the kind introduction. I am so pleased to be with you today amongst so many friends and colleagues. At the outset, I'd like to thank Visit Scotland for organizing this timely and important event in conjunction with COP26. I'm here to talk to you about new ways of managing tourism that is different than what we've done in the past, and more importantly, to be here with you to introduce the new and exciting Scotland UNESCO Trail. So if you bear with me for one moment while I share my screen. Scotland's UNESCO Trail is the first national UNESCO trail anywhere in the world that brings together the full range of UNESCO place-based designations, World Heritage Sites, Global Geoparks, Biosphere Reserves, and the Creative Cities Network, all the while promoting responsible tourism throughout these destinations. The trail has been created through a unique and global first partnership between the Scottish Government, the UK National Commission for UNESCO, designation representatives of the 13 UNESCO sites, Visit Scotland, Historic Environment Scotland, Nature Scot, and the National Trust for Scotland. This really underscores the great collaboration between these organizations and agencies that produce this amazing product. So a warm congratulations to all. The newly created digital assets will include a dedicated web pages hosted on VisitScotland.com, new itineraries and videos. It is an innovative idea that deserves everyone's support, and I'm very proud to have taken a small part in its inception based on UNESCO's World Heritage Journeys project, which helped inspire the Scotland UNESCO Trail. But we cannot talk about tourism today without acknowledging that the world has changed considerably over the past few years, and we are just beginning to understand the impact the pandemic has had on our cherished heritage and the tourism that depends on it. So as we take the time to rethink how we manage tourism, we can begin by simply offering experiences that reflect the natural and cultural heritage of the destination, such as local art and cultural events, communing with nature, hiking, biking, visiting museums and other cultural institutions, experiencing the local gastronomy, or co-creating experience with locals through courses, workshops, and engaging in everyday activities. Early this year, the UN Tourism Organization released an inclusive recovery guide on the socio-cultural aspects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The cultural tourism issue was developed in collaboration with UNESCO. The guidelines highlight the similar challenges facing tourism and culture in adapting to new COVID-19 visitor regulations, modification of facilities, as well as a digital transition, all of which are relevant in the current context. It also stressed the need for greater collaboration between the tourism and culture sectors to enrich practices and foster joint approaches to comply with all the measures and regain visitor confidence. The creation of participatory governance structures was cited as key to gather artists and cultural professionals, local associations and community groups, the private sector, and destination representatives to agree and act upon a shared vision for their cultural destination and enhance competitiveness. Greater coordination is needed to increase and strengthen international cooperation and networks that can facilitate this process. To transform tourism, an open discussion on a conscious and responsible culture and creative tourism is critical. As a collective group of stakeholders, we need to explore how destinations and the art and cultural institutions can respond to their roles within societies. The latest global events show how cultural destinations can sensitize a wider audience on the society's need for intercultural dialogue, social justice, and responsible consumption. Supporting culture in the creative sector can be a win-win for tourism destinations by enhancing the role of culture and creativity in destinations. Cultural products and experiences are key assets for destination marketing strategies, but they also require equal relevance in the emergency and support planning. Revenue loss and forced closures are severely impacting heritage sites, cultural events, spaces, and institutions, weakening a destination's competitiveness and market differentiation. Importantly, we need to inspire travelers to discover local culture, art, and creative industries by creating new experiences that re-engage with local communities. Tourism strategies can target domestic travelers by reconnecting them with their own cultures and heritage. By diversifying their audiences through culture and not focusing only on international market destinations will pave the path for a long-lasting recovery. A key emerging trend is the impacting travel is nature-based tourism and tourism to rural areas, which is critical for the Scotland UNESCO trails. For cities in particular, this is an opportunity to get people outside into parks and other outdoor venues. Combining a rural-urban experience can also help diversify tourism offers, which will ultimately result in strengthened urban-rural complementarity in tourism, as well as new synergies and collaborations. Building a more resilient tourism and cultural workforce through the digital transition will help prepare destinations and strengthen the recovery. There is an urgent need to build back better with decent employment models, training, and professional upskilling. This refers in particular to new technologies and customer service adjustments to new health measures that require up-to-date skills. The improvements will support the efforts of both sectors geared towards talent retention and a more resilient workforce. By supporting digital access and digital literacy, we can overcome some of the obstacles that were exacerbated by the pandemic. While digital transition provides important opportunities for culture and creative tourism, it also risks deepening inequalities and the standardizing cultural dissemination. Recognizing the social rights of artists and cultural professionals is key for ensuring meaningful and diverse cultural tourism experiences. The digital shift also requires commercial skills, so as creators, institutions, and businesses can place their products and experience in the digital market, harnessing technology to make cultural tourism more competitive. The creation of startups and alliances with key players bring competitive advantages and can benefit local communities and neighborhoods. By developing expertise in distribution and promotion will be key. By building alliances with technology and media partners, we can forge win-win partnerships that leverage lasting benefits. Again, this will be key for the Scotland UNESCO Trail. These may include tailored virtual reality experiences to complement the limited access to cultural sites, partnerships with local social media to showcase destinations' culture, or the development of applications enabling a safer visitor experience. By introducing a comprehensive place-based approach for cultural tourism, we can develop tourism experiences based on the cultural uniqueness of destinations across different fields, including cultural heritage, gastronomy, nature tourism, design patterns, and other forms of local cultural expressions and that better involve local creators, cultural practitioners, and inhabitants in the shaping of policies and practices. How we encourage stakeholders to foster community-based tourism through living heritage will help build resiliency and help transform destinations. Through addressing a wide range of tourism stakeholders, from policymakers to development departments, tourism experts, tour operators, travel agencies, and other stakeholders working in the field, we can raise awareness of the important role of communities and cultural practitioners and living heritage on the sustainable development of tourism. The pandemic is an opportunity to rethink and review tourism experiences related to living heritage towards reshaping and rendering them more inclusive and sustainable. The viability of the heritage should be in no way be diminished or threatened. We should strive to develop community-based tourism initiatives that actively engage practitioners of local and traditional knowledge to strengthen systems for transmitting living heritage to future generations through sustainable tourism, and exploring how living heritage and tourism can improve the livelihoods of communities and practitioners while safeguarding the social functions and cultural meanings of that heritage. So moving forward, how can we best put these guidelines into practice? What do some potential lines of actions look like? Well, the first is capitalizing on new services that tourism businesses and creative industries have been providing to destinations in times of crisis, which can bring an opportunity to create stronger ties with local communities, integrate local wisdom, and enhance local satisfaction with tourism. Communities may need business mentorship for their local entrepreneurship ventures to improve their supply chains inclusion. Furthermore, stronger local value chains bring social and economic benefits to local communities, reduce dependency on foreign suppliers while supporting the circularity of tourism operations. Nature-based solutions have the potential to drive innovation in tourism towards sustainability, and besides mitigating the environmental impacts of tourism activity, result in better management of scarce natural resources such as water, coral reefs, wetlands, mangroves, coastlines, and foster disaster resilience in both in urban and natural environments. Investment in nature-based solutions also respond well to the expectations of a growing demand for experiences in nature. By introducing a comprehensive place-based approach for tourism, again, we can develop tourism experiences based on the uniqueness of destinations across different fields, including cultural heritage, gastronomy, local cultural expressions, and better involve the local creators, as I mentioned previously. I would like to now share with you some tools that UNESCO has developed to help in the management and promotion of destinations. The first is the World Heritage Journeys program, which I mentioned earlier. It is the first travel website for World Heritage developed with National Geographic. It showcases UNESCO recognized outstanding cultural heritage in an online platform that promotes sustainable tourism development across Europe, bringing together 34 World Heritage sites through 4 different thematic itineraries: Royal Europe, Ancient Europe, Underground Europe, and Romantic Europe. Each journey is intended to inspire travelers to visit the sites and develop a greater understanding of outstanding universal value and cultural heritage at large. Cultural heritage is the primary focus for this initiative, combining both built heritage with historic and existing intangible cultural heritage expressed in the community's living cultural values. The World Heritage Journeys is a key awareness-raising activity of the UNESCO Sustainable Tourism Program and is currently expanding to other regions in the world and in Europe. In 2019, UNESCO and the Expedia Group launched a partnership focused on promoting sustainable tourism and heritage conservation through a sustainable travel pledge. The pledge takes an industry-first approach to environmental and cultural protection, requiring hotel operators to introduce firm measures to protect the environment and promote local culture. It is the first collaboration between UNESCO and a global online travel agency. The pilot phase of the project was launched in 2020 in Thailand in collaboration with the Tourism Authority of Thailand, with over 500 hotels signing the pledge to date in Thailand. Efforts are underway for the global expansion of the pledge, and I am pleased to say that Visit Scotland will be joining the UNESCO Sustainable Travel Pledge. We are very excited to be working with you on this new initiative, and to date we have over 4,000 hotels that have taken the pledge. I'm happy to say that with the support from the German Development Cooperation in cooperation with GIZ, UNESCO will be focusing efforts to strengthen the pledge in 7 countries, including Vietnam, Indonesia, Cambodia, Kenya, Namibia, Georgia, and Bosnia-Herzegovina as part of BNZ Corona Tourism Package. A new global website was unveiled last week for the pledge, and you can find it at www.unescosustainable.travel. So in conclusion, my presentation highlights both the challenges and opportunities for the heritage sites and communities that rely on tourism in the face of major disruptive events such as the global pandemic. It underscores the need to ensure that when tourism rebounds, it spurs innovation and tests new approaches to support communities in their recovery and transform destinations away from outdated and unsustainable models and towards a strategic approach for tourism that rejuvenates communities, protects nature, and harnesses cultural values that builds community resiliency to help buffer communities from future disruptions such as climate change. By showcasing and sharing good practice approaches, we can promote, recognize, and incentivize sustainable development at and around UNESCO sites and cooperate across borders and between sites, and most importantly, achieve the conservation goals and the regeneration challenges that we are entrusted to uphold. This is the spirit of the new Scotland UNESCO Trail, and I wish everybody a great success. Thank you for your kind attention.
I'll pass on that round of applause to Peter since he's not here to hear it. So as Janie said, my name is Paula Ward and I work in the Industry and Destination Development team at Visit Scotland. I think what I find most encouraging from that piece of work that Peter put together for us is listening to all of the presenters that have gone before this morning. We're on that journey. We're quite far ahead on that journey. When he's giving that presentation and that talk to other nations, they might not have the types of incentives and the types of funding programs and support mechanisms that we have in place, or indeed the appetite from our industry. So it's a pleasure to be here. This is a project that I've spent the last 2 years of my life working on, and I've been surrounded by a team of great advisors and mentors. So I'm going to hopefully show you what responsible tourism in action looks like at a destination level, but first I'd quite like to set the scene and introduce you to Scotland's UNESCO Trail.
Every inch of Scotland has more story to tell than meets the eye. Each landscape has played witness to billions of years of history. Each island could tell you more stories than the pages of books. There is wildlife thriving under every leaf, and evidence of adventures past round every corner. Our grand stone cities play host to culture and creativity, cutting-edge design and innovation, music enjoyed around the world, and heroes of the written word. Then there's the people. Well, we'll let you hear it from them yourselves. In a world first, one country's UNESCO sites have been brought together. Are you ready to discover the wonders within Scotland's UNESCO Trail?
Okay, so let's dive straight into the project. The concept seed was planted at the launch of the Galloway and Southern Ayrshire Biosphere Certified Business Scheme in 2018. It started off as a conversation to plan and develop Scotland's UNESCO Trail, but we knew at the outset that this was going to need to be something different. It was an opportunity to have a different dialogue and speak to our citizens and our visitor audience in a different way. That gave us our anchor, which was always going to be responsible tourism. It would be the golden thread that runs through all of the assets, all of the partnerships, and all of the narrative connected to this project. At the time in 2018, Scotland was enjoying significant growth in our visitor economy. It had started, though, to give us acute issues, capacity issues in some parts of Scotland at peak times, and we knew that that needed to be addressed. Visit Scotland had been working in that space to address those issues by the development of regionally based focused content. We were looking to encourage visitor dispersal to lesser known destinations and also attract out of season visitation. What we didn't know when this project was started in 2018 was that by the time it came to fruition, it would be an important proposition to support our visitor economy and more specifically our green recovery efforts. We did know that it was going to be a global first. No other country in the world had ever brought together their UNESCO designations of differing natures to put together World Heritage, biospheres, global geoparks and creative cities as a national trail. Had never been done before. The motivation for that was to make sure that this trail sustainably contributed to the quality of life in those communities. Trails up until that point hadn't always done what they thought they were going to achieve. So it is a unique partnership, as Peter has already said. It's important to say that that unique partnership started off between UNESCO, Scottish Government, Visit Scotland and the 13 designations. It then expanded out to bring in other partners, Historic Environment Scotland, Nature Scot and National Trust. More recently, we've also now partnered strategically with Green Tourism, and Andrea Nicholas is here today, and I'll tell you a little bit about the funding that's available through this project in partnership with Green Tourism. We also have other commercial partners that we're currently working through a process with. What we did know is it would need to be digital first. So the aims and the objectives of the project are firmly rooted in sustainable and responsible tourism. We wanted to create a flagship product that would really position Scotland's brand reputation on this stage. I was hugely fortunate to have access to UNESCO and to have access to Peter de Bruyne at the inception stage of this project. And they were, I guess, so open. They shared sensitive information with me. They shared best practice and case study information so that we could help to inform our strategy of how we were going to deliver this. So project objectives, the definition of value is not always more boots on the ground. It's not always about having more visitors. And because of the work that UNESCO did with me, we very much decided that this was going to be about the value of customers over the volume. Each of the 13 designations were able to define what value meant to them, so it wasn't Visit Scotland or the steering committee making a decision as to what we wanted in each of those designations. The designations themselves have told us what their definition of value is, and that's then helped to inform the way that we created the content. So for example, St Kilda, very sensitive designation, doesn't necessarily want thousands more visitors on the ground, but what they do want is an engagement with their story. They want a wider engagement with the Hebridean story, because not only are they part of the archipelago. Their story is firmly rooted in that Hebridean story as well, so everyone's definition of value is different. You can see the geographical spread of visitors, encouraging proper, meaningful engagement with communities, the promotion of UNESCO values, sustainable tourism policies, can this influence it in any way, and also to aid the recovery. The UN Sustainable Development Goals are really important, and you'll see how we feature that in the future content that we developed. So first and foremost, it's critical to the project that we start with the UNESCO values. So we tell the story of how the organisation began, and I guess let me set the scene. For those who don't know how UNESCO began, it's the height of the Second World War. Thousands of people have sacrificed their lives, cities are decimated by bombs, and governments are in exile. The world has pretty much been ripped apart by fear. It's from these dark grounds that endeavours to foster a hopeful and forward-looking spirit of international cooperation emerge, and UNESCO begins to take shape. One way UNESCO does this is by recognising, preserving and educating people about the world's most extraordinary places, and Scotland is filled with those. Here are listed the 13 place-based designations that are included within the trail. They are amazing landscapes, breathtaking natural beauty, ancient archaeology, groundbreaking architecture and technological marvels, and importantly, responsible and hyper-connected communities that then service them. This gave us 13 incredible stories to weave together. So the digital asset objectives, we needed to make sure that the objectives for any content that was created would match the project objectives, which we've just covered. That was important to us because it meant that when you lift the bonnet of this project that's got integrity, it stands up to scrutiny and it doesn't fall over when someone tries to take a closer look at it. So sustainability was built into this project right from the get-go. What did we create? We created a dedicated microsite. We created 2 consumer videos with cut downs. We've got 30 new pages of content. We have journeys that help people to trip plan across Scotland in a sustainable manner. It lives and breathes within VisitScotland.com, and that was driven by the sustainability discussion. All too often when you have a project like this, it's funded from a separate pot of money, and it has a key risk associated with it because it takes money and energy to keep a website up, running, live, up to date and current. So for this reason, the decision was taken to develop it within .com. It gives long-term viability to the content. It ensures we can keep it current and up to date, relevant, but also optimised. And by doing it, we can guarantee the user journey to make sure that we can connect them to meaningful, sustainable pledged businesses or green tourism accredited businesses as well, which we built into the design for the website. Websites are huge users of energy. So again, we looked at how do we reduce our footprint in this space. So looking at key factors to make the website more energy efficient. We made choices around dark navigation because it uses less energy. We obviously look at search engine optimization so we can serve that content back to our consumers more readily. Server locations is important. How your website caches and how frequently it does that again is important. So these types of things were taken into consideration as we developed it. So the designation pages, every piece of content serves a purpose to deliver against the project. There's detailed information on each of these designations. These 13 designations, I've now got the benefit of 2 years worth of knowledge under my belt on these designations, and they are unique and special and completely important to our story. They have set standards in geological innovation and technological innovation and the way that we live, that we breathe, the way that our ancestors are recognised. They also make us globally significant. These are our gifts to the world. They can't be replicated anywhere else. And for that reason, we made sure all the content that we created and curated was done in partnership with those designation representatives. So it's not Visit Scotland telling you these stories, it's the UNESCO designations telling you their very personal stories. Every business featured, you can see here, We built in a business carousel and we coded it so that it would return green tourism accredited businesses. All of the businesses that you see featured on the content pages are either certified through the Proud Ambassador programmes or through the Business Network programmes at the designation level. That's particularly important to the geoparks and the biospheres. The geoparks and the biospheres are in some of the most rural and fragile environments in Scotland, and the business supply chain that exists within those areas have got an extreme amount of fragility, so they had to be supported. So we built that into the way that we built the system. You also see on the designation pages, we specifically focus on the the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These are really important because it's not just about saying we contribute. So we don't just have the logo and the goal there. Underneath every single one within that designation, it's about, well, how do they contribute? What do they actively do in order for us to say, make that claim that they contribute in a meaningful way towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals? I think now at this time in history, it's probably the best time that we have to be able to have these quite sophisticated conversations, both with our citizens and also with our visitors. And I think demonstrating that we can collectively make a difference is absolutely essential for Scotland's reputation. So planning your journey. In our Plan Your Journey section, we've created a suite of content which acts as inspirational journeys. So this is everything from the full trail to trail for families, last-minute sustainable breaks, and then also 7 geographical propositions. The Family Days Out serves against the promoting the UNESCO values. We have thousands and thousands of young people and kids in this country, and they don't know that on their doorstep they've got New Lanark, which was groundbreaking in the way that we treated our industrialised staff. They don't know that we've got a Galloway and Southern Ayrshire biosphere on our UNESCO biosphere on our doorstep. And I think one of the ambitions for this project is that we speak to our Scots audience in a different way, and we ask them to raise their heads, engage with us as a subject matter, and really appreciate what is part of their heritage, what is part of their makeup, what is part of their right to make claim to. We prioritise content that would focus on useful information. We want to equip and empower our visitors to be able to make good choices. I think going back to what Chris says, it's the intention for people to make good choices is there. It's how do we reduce the barriers to allow them to do it. Most people are inherently good people, but we need to make it easy for them. So we shared detailed information on how they can make good choices and how the UNESCO Trail can be a force for good. That includes making good travel choices, how can they donate to conservation programmes within each of the designation or their holiday choice areas, are there volunteering, restoration or rewilding projects that they can get involved with, and I think that's really important for this project. So the trail explained, UNESCO is a complex subject. We knew that from the outset, and I really appreciate the UNESCO partners that we've had in this project, particularly Professor Anne Anderson, who's the UK chair for the UNESCO Commission in the UK, and she was so honest when we were thrashing these ideas through to say, well, actually, UNESCO's kind of over here somewhere. It's a bit of a remote idea, and it can be hard to reach out and touch, particularly if you don't have that academic grounding, particularly if you don't quite understand what the topic and the subject matter is. And because we had that, I guess, approval from the steering committee to pursue this, it gave us the chance to think about what assets we would create. So we've created a Trail Explained video. It's a little mini movie, so I'm going to take you on a journey over the next 6 minutes and hopefully give you a full immersion in the UNESCO project.
UNESCO. You might have heard of it. You might even be able to name a UNESCO World Heritage Site or two. But what does it mean? And what does it have to do with Scotland? Founded in 1945, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization brings together countries, communities, and people in a global mission to promote science, education, and culture. One way UNESCO does this is by protecting and celebrating the world's most extraordinary places, and most importantly, creating awareness of their significance. These places are known as UNESCO designations, places which have the power to change the way we see, experience, and understand the planet and ourselves. And you can see some of them on Scotland's UNESCO Trail. From ancient archaeology and incredible landscapes, sustainable communities to technological marvels, Scotland's 13 UNESCO designations are a treasure trove of natural gems and human ingenuity. Let's find out more. First up is the biospheres. These places of extraordinary natural beauty are networks of unique ecosystems where communities exist in equilibrium with their natural environment. Here, traditional ways of life still hold sway, and vibrant and contemporary cultural life thrives. We've got two. Spanning 3,000 square miles, Wester Ross Biosphere is set in the stunning Northwest Highlands. Here you'll find an ever-growing array of sustainable attractions and activities, and traditional crofting communities where Gaelic heritage intertwines people with nature. To the south lies Galloway and Southern Ayrshire Biosphere, ripe with outdoor adventures and amazing geology shaped by shifting glaciers and seismic events. See natural history come to life and delve into a dynamic cultural scene in artists' towns. Scotland's UNESCO designations aren't just all about nature and history. Entire cities are recognised for having creativity at the heart of their cultural life. Like Edinburgh, UNESCO's first ever City of Literature. Books have been part of Edinburgh's DNA for centuries, with some of the world's best-loved writers having found inspiration here. It's even home to the largest celebration of the written word in the world, the Edinburgh International Book Festival. Scotland is also world-renowned for music, thanks to Glasgow. The first ever UNESCO City of Music has a burgeoning music scene, boasting legendary venues, prestigious music and dance companies, a lively busking scene, and more. Music is the heartbeat of the city. It's even been known to host up to 130 music events a week. When it comes to design, Scotland has always held its own, especially in Dundee, the UK's first ever city of design. The home of Desperate Dan, Grand Theft Auto, and the first Victoria and Albert Museum built outside of London, this compact city has made major contributions to fields as diverse as biotechnology, tech, and fashion. Scotland's geology is a wonder to behold. Home to 2 UNESCO global geoparks, see incredible geological sites, many believe to be among the oldest and most precious in the world. The Northwest Highlands Geopark can be like setting foot in the prehistoric era. In fact, it's one of the most fascinating landscapes on the planet, attracting geologists and scientists from around the world to learn how the planet was made, drawn by some of the oldest rock formations in existence. Then there's Shetland. The whole archipelago is a designated geopark, thanks to a geology that spans 3 billion years. It's one of the most geologically diverse areas in Europe, home to 23 unique plant species and 6,000 years of archaeology. And finally, there are the World Heritage Sites. These are landmarks of human progress, places that have moved the goalposts of innovation from the dawn of civilization to the present day. First up is St Kilda. See how generations of islanders adapted to this remote environment, sculpted over millions of years by natural forces and thousands of years of human activity. At the heart of Neolithic Orkney, trace over 5,000 years of human development at 4 of the greatest Neolithic sites in Europe. Or uncover traces of one of the most ambitious constructions in ancient times, the Antonine Wall, a mighty fortification that marked the final frontier of the northerly Roman Empire. The Romans left, and the ideas of the classical world gave way to the revolutionary approach captured during the Scottish Enlightenment in 18th century Edinburgh. You can see how this influenced the transformation of the city, which saw the medieval Old Town joined by the elegant Georgian New Town. The progressive ideals of the Enlightenment are also embodied by New Lanark, a preserved mill village which showed how industry could be a force for good by ensuring humane living and working conditions for workers. Lastly, we have the Forth Bridge. Spanning the Firth of Forth, this immense railway viaduct is a testament to Scottish engineering and remains the world's longest ever cantilever bridge. Regarded as one of the great wonders of the Victorian age, it's still in operation today. Be part of the life-changing power of responsible tourism on Scotland's UNESCO Trail and discover why Scotland's UNESCO designations make our country unlike anywhere else. From supporting local businesses to opting for eco-friendly transport, the choices you make will enrich Scotland, safeguard the environment, and create a sustainable, greener, and brighter future for all.
Isn't Scotland brilliant? It's absolutely the best. So I guess a project like this, when you launch on the 15th of October, that isn't by any manner of means the end of a project like this. It's actually just the beginning, because it's now about articulation and how do we embed those values of responsible tourism and sustainable development into every touch point that we have going forward. So I had touched on the strategic partnership that we've entered into with Angie Nicholas and the Green Tourism Limited team. Through Janie's work with Scottish Government, we have secured funding for businesses to be able to go through their green accreditation process. We know that businesses want to be able to do the right thing, but sometimes it is prohibitive to jump the fence that first time. So Angie has been working with us on looking at what can we do in that 3-year space. So that funding package will be announced in the coming months. We're just working through the mechanics of that. We're also about to launch a new Spirit of ScotRail Pass, which would be Scotland's UNESCO Trail Travel Pass, which means that visitors and citizens can travel to all 13 of our designations and take part in Scotland's UNESCO Trail, but in a sustainable and responsible way. Peter had mentioned the Expedia UNESCO Travel Pledge, which is due to launch later this week, and 73 properties that have listings in .com will now become part of that Expedia Travel Pledge, and we hope that that will increase existentially over the coming years. And then we're about to start, Paul's just left the room, but I'm about to start with Paul as the chair of the SDMA, a travel trade development project, to look at this now. We were just waiting on a piece of development work that we needed done for VisitScotland.com to allow the tour operators to select their green accreditation and let us know that they were green accredited. So that is due to be uploaded onto the TMS system within the next fortnight, and from there we can start working on what that product on the ground looks like. So I hope that's given you a really good quick dive into Scotland's UNESCO Trail. Interestingly, the video that you've just watched, UNESCO Explained, has been viewed just over 11,000 times already on YouTube. My ambition would be that every child in Scotland is able to tell you about UNESCO, and I've already pitched it to my son's primary 1 teacher, but she's told me they're a wee bit too young for that at the moment. But that would be my ambition, is that everybody knows how fantastic Scotland is, and that these UNESCO designations make up part of what makes us so special on a global stage. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. That brings us to the end of today's event, Scotland Destination Net Zero, but it's the beginning of the journey of Net Zero. So let me just say a very quick few thank yous. Rob, who kicked us all off with £4 million. Remember, there's money out there to help us achieve this. Chris, who of course is better known to us all as Mr. McMidgeyburger. That was one of his forecasts for the future, for a meat-free future. But some fascinating insights. And the really key thing is, what we know is that the later millennial generations and their successors want to buy what we've been talking about. The market is there. To our panel, Dan, Jill, and Caroline, waste, transport, energy, green tourism, I mean, fantastic stories. Thank you so much. And I hope everybody's taken a lot from that. And those wonderful case studies. Giovanna Eusebi at the restaurant. What a wonderful idea. I'd love to think that actually, with all that mutual composting the restaurants are doing, that they're selling it to the residents for their flower beds. So they go and eat in the restaurant and get the compost for their flower beds. And then Cairngorm, Bothies, Gordon. I'm delighted to know somebody's done what I'm trying to do. I'll be coming to talk to you in the not too distant future. I grew up in a house with Aladdin lamps and one of those stoves, and it wasn't inventing the wheel, that's how everything was if you lived in the depths of Caithness in those days. And Wilderness Scotland, Paul Easto, what a wonderful concept. It's exactly what we're talking about, which is you green the product, but the key thing of being purpose-driven marketing, supporting what we're doing, but also measuring how important that is and getting that all right. And then Paula ending there with that wonderful explanation of UNESCO, and Paul Devine coming in from America. So let me just, I wrote the few odd buzzwords down. I started off with, we've got to do it. It can't be business as usual, which is a negative message. I come out of this at the end of the day with nothing but can do. We've been doing it. We will do it. I think it's tremendously positive. The whole concept of travel once, stay longer. Travel, stay, enjoy, rather than rush. I think that's come out quite clearly. Value over numbers has been tremendous, and telling us to, get our marketing around what it is that people are doing, which is a message we've got. And true net zero. No fudge. Forget the funny offsets and the greenwashing. Let's really do this properly. All that's come out. When I first mooted within Visit Scotland that we might look at what's now become responsible tourism, I was guilty of doing, I suppose, what would be called around these parts as quite a lot of blah, blah, blah. And actually, that's what chairmen do, isn't it? They just say, I've got this idea. And actually, Visit Scotland have taken with it, run with it, and a lot of people have engaged with it. And without all those people, with Janie and her wonderful team, Caroline, Paula, Chris, Rob, all of them buying into this. And my board, Anne Anderson is here, who's also you're a UNESCO ambassador, or UNESCO involved. But without all that support, we wouldn't have got to where we are today, which is not blah, 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 it's cha-cha-cha. And so you can have that one from me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. I hope you've got takeaways from this, and I look forward to this journey in the years ahead. Thank you.